Look, have you ever actually stopped to think about the fact that you've got the exact same 24 hours in a day as, say, a billionaire, a groundbreaking scientist, or an Olympic athlete? I mean, what's the difference? It all comes down to how they run their minds. Let's be totally honest here. We've all had those mornings. You wake up and you're just already exhausted. It feels like your own brain is literally an obstacle course. By the time you sit down for your morning coffee, your brain has already processed tens of thousands of thoughts. You're staring down this massive to-do list, your energy is completely at zero, and the second you try to focus, boom, distractions everywhere. Phone notifications, social media, your mind just flipping channels every 5 seconds. But what if you could actually wire your brain for peak performance? Today, we're going to dive deep into exactly how high performers use neuroscience to do just that.
Welcome to this explainer. Look, we are going to completely shift your mindset today. We're going to stop fighting against our tired brains and start, actually playing by its biological rules. Neuroscience has made it incredibly clear how our brains make decisions, how they get all tangled up in distractions, and most importantly, how we can rewire them to be insanely productive. Think of this as discovering the hidden shortcut buttons in your mind. We're talking about controlling stress, flipping the switch on motivation, and just crushing that natural resistance. Once you grasp these 8 brain rules, I promise you'll never look at your workday the same way again. Let's get right into it. So, here's our blueprint for today. First, we'll look at mastering the brain. Then we'll build the foundation with sleep and exercise. After that, we're talking focus and freedom from stress, upgrading your learning with repetition and visuals, and finally, sustaining all of that by tapping into emotions and the literal biological power of breaks.
All right, Section 1, Mastering the Brain. It's time we learn to play by the rules. Just imagine waking up feeling completely fresh. Your mind is sharp, clear, and you're actually knocking out tasks ahead of schedule without all that pressure. Listen, true productivity, it's not some fantasy. It is pure science. But first, we have to bust a massive myth. This whole toxic hustle culture tells us that success means constantly multitasking, running on no sleep, and just grinding 24/7. But the actual neuroscience reality, it tells a totally different story. Our brains absolutely demand deep focus. Why? Because context switching comes with a huge metabolic cost. Every single time you bounce between tasks, you are literally burning through your brain's energy reserves. The reality is, your brain needs sleep as a hard reset, and it biologically requires breaks to keep functioning at a high level. That silent war between your brain and your bad habits, it ends the moment you align your routine with actual biology.
Moving right along to Section 2, sleep and exercise. This is our foundation. Okay, so before you can optimize your thoughts, you've got to optimize the machine itself, right? And our first rule is this. Sleep is the brain's ultimate reset button. So often, we treat sleep like it's some luxury. I'll work first, sleep later. We sabotage our nights staring at glowing screens, scrolling through reels, binging Netflix. But when you do that, you are basically overheating your brain. Here's the crazy science about what actually happens when you finally close your eyes. Your brain activates something called the glymphatic system. Now think of this as a literal plumbing system inside your head that only opens up during deep sleep. It washes away all the toxic proteins and cellular waste that pile up during the day. So sleep isn't just passive resting. It's this highly active, absolutely critical cleaning process. It clears out the brain fog, files your memories away properly, and rebalances your emotions.
And that brings us to rule number 2, which is all about movement. When your brain feels slow and sluggish, reaching for another cup of coffee or hiding behind a screen, yeah, that's not the fix. Exercise is. There is a very good reason why brilliant minds like Charles Darwin or Steve Jobs relied on these long daily walks to get their biggest breakthroughs. They just instinctively knew that taking a brisk 20-minute walk completely changes your brain structure. As your heart rate goes up, boom, you get this rush of dopamine and serotonin. But it actually goes way deeper than just feeling good. Movement literally stimulates the creation of brand new neurons that handle memory and creativity. You are practically building a bigger, better brain just by stepping outside for a bit. Exercise isn't just for your muscles, guys. It is premium high-octane fuel for your mind. All right, Section 3, focus and stress. Let's talk about finding some freedom from the chaos. So, rule number 3 tackles the absolute modern plague of distraction. Have you ever caught yourself typing on a laptop, holding your phone, maybe a video's playing in the background, and then it hits 5 o'clock and you're like, wait, what did I actually get done today? Multitasking is a total trap. It's a false comfort. In neuroscience, there's this fascinating concept known as attention residue. Every single time you check your phone or just quickly glance at an email,
a little piece of your attention actually stays stuck on it. And that completely cripples your cognitive capacity for the next 20 minutes. Crazy, right? Deep work is the superpower of locking your mind entirely onto one single task. When you cut out that attention residue and just focus, your brainwaves operate like a laser beam. They penetrate down into depths where your true creativity and problem-solving skills just absolutely explode. Which brings us to rule 4, managing stress. Now, stress usually feels like this invisible storm inside us, just slowly chewing up our focus. But biologically speaking, stress isn't your enemy. It's really just an alarm bell going off. When stress hits you hard, you experience what psychologists call an amygdala hijack. That's when the primitive, fearful part of your brain just completely takes the wheel and your logical prefrontal cortex literally shuts down. So to reboot that logical brain, you need 4 really actionable steps. First, you've got to pause. Stop all the inputs right away. Second, breathe deeply. That signals safety to your nervous system. Third, move your body to physically flush out those trapped stress hormones. And fourth, reset your expectations. You have to give your mind the respect and the space it needs to recalibrate. Moving to section 4, repetition and visuals. It is time to seriously upgrade your learning. So rule 5 is pretty straightforward. Repeat to remember. You know how you'll read this incredibly inspiring quote or learn a cool new concept and then totally draw a blank when you actually need to use it? Don't worry, your memory isn't broken. The reality is, our brain is exactly like a muscle. You wouldn't expect to get a six-pack from hitting the gym one time, right? Well, you can't retain knowledge just by reading it once either. In neuroscience, there's this absolute golden rule. Neurons that fire together wire together. Real retention takes deliberate repetition because every single time you revisit an idea, you are literally thickening the physical neural connections inside your brain. When you hear, write, or even just think about an idea over and over, it anchors deep down into your subconscious. And that's how passing inspiration turns into a permanent, effortless habit. And rule 6 takes this whole concept even further. Visuals beat text every single time. Listen to this staggering fact. The human brain processes images up to 60,000 times faster than text. 60,000! When you read words, your brain is doing some serious heavy lifting. It has to concentrate and decode the meaning of every single letter and sentence. But when you look at an image, your brain just absorbs the colors, the context, the whole meaning in a split second. By using things like mind maps, diagrams, or even just color-coded notes, you completely bypass that painfully slow decoding process. You take dry, boring information and turn it into a highly memorable, almost emotional experience. You don't just see the visuals, you instantly feel and understand them. Finally, section 5, emotions and brakes. Let's talk about how to sustain the engine. Rule 7 reveals a really deep underlying truth. Emotions drive action. Look, we all love to think of ourselves as these highly logical creatures, right? We tell ourselves, just be disciplined, put your head down, stop wasting time. But here's the thing. Logic alone cannot sustain discipline over the long haul. Think about a mother staying up all night with a sick child, or a soldier risking his life, or an artist painstakingly painting for months on end. They aren't doing that because of some logical, perfectly scheduled routine. No way. They are driven by deep personal emotion. If a goal doesn't have an emotional connection for you, it is literally just another chore on a checklist. You absolutely have to attach a profound emotional why to your tasks if you want to ignite that unstoppable fire of motivation. And that brings us to our final rule, Rule 8. The brain needs breaks. We live in this world that expects us to just run like machines from dawn till dusk. But science clearly shows that we operate on something called the ultradian rhythm. Basically, our brains can only maintain peak laser-like focus for about 90 to 120 minutes. After that, you are going to hit a wall of brain fog. And listen to me, that is not a sign of weakness. What's actually happening biologically is a rapid depletion of glucose and oxygen right there in your prefrontal cortex. Your brain is screaming for a reset. By taking a mandatory guilt-free break of just 5 to 10 minutes, literally just stepping away, taking a breath, looking out a window, you replenish those resources. You give your brain the silent power to bounce back with twice the clarity. So there you have it. We've walked through the 8 rules of your brain's natural operating system. From dialing in your sleep and getting moving, to mastering deep work, managing stress, and tapping into repetition, visuals, emotions, and those highly strategic breaks. But hey, remember this, all these insights, they're completely useless unless you actually take action. Just sitting here watching this explainer isn't going to change your life. Applying it will. So I want to leave you with one final kind of provocative question to think about. Which of these 8 rules are you going to commit to applying today? Seriously, pick just one. Take action on it and watch how quickly you can shift from ordinary to extraordinary. Thanks so much for hanging out for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.